How would you like to find gold in the state of Alaska? It's no secret that the state of Alaska has produced millions of ounces of placer gold. And because of television and other publicity, prospecting in Alaska is the dream of many. There's no doubt that there's still a lot of gold to be found in Alaska, and with the high price of an ounce of gold right now, the interest in the state's riches has reached a fever pitch. Although the state of Alaska has produced millions of ounces of gold in the past, a lot of the areas are very, very remote, and there's still many areas that really have not seen modern prospecting and remain to be fully worked. In this video, we're going to look at the placer districts of Alaska and the practicalities of how you can get there and get some of that really good Alaskan gold for yourself. Gold was known in Alaska as early as 1848, long before the U.S. acquired the state of Alaska from Russia. But although gold was known to be present, there really was very little of it produced prior to 1880. It was just too remote, and the known placers were just not that rich that they would attract people from all over the globe. However, discoveries in the 1880s, more or less along the boundary area between Canada and Alaska, in the 40 Mile River area, produced the first significant placer gold production from the state. Alaska has produced roughly 21 million ounces of placer gold, with around another 10 million coming from hard rock districts, mostly from the modern open pit mine at Fairbanks called the Fort Knox mine, which has produced over 9.5 million ounces of gold. Of the 21 million ounces of placer gold, most of it, about 13 million, has come from the interior region of Alaska, which includes about 7.5 million that has come from the Fairbanks area, as well as about 1.3 million that's come from the Iditarod district. The Seward Peninsula, which is famous for the Nome area placers, has produced about another 6 million ounces of placer gold. Let's take a look at some Alaskan placer gold and talk about its characteristics and what you might find if you went prospecting in Alaska.
This is the largest nugget ever found in Alaska. It was actually found in the late 1990s, but it weighs 294 ounces, and no one's going to complain about a 294 ounce nugget. That's a quite an amazing find. But one of the things that I'm going to tell you in talking about Alaska gold is that a lot of districts in Alaska tend to produce what they call shot gold. That's basically small flakes and bits and not a lot of real big nuggets. Now, believe me, there certainly are districts that produce real big nuggets. Here's another nice large Alaska nugget. I believe this weighs a little over 20 ounces, and it was found with a metal detector. It's a beautiful piece of gold. But again, I don't want to oversell, but I don't want to undersell the size of Alaskan gold. If you choose the right district to prospect in, you're going to be able to find some good nuggets. This actually is gold that I found metal detecting in Alaska. And the two big nuggets on the left, the lower one weighs a little more than 3/4 of an ounce. It's actually the second largest nugget I've ever found. And then the upper one on the left actually doesn't weigh as much, although it looks bigger, just because there's a lot of quartz in that piece. It's got good gold, but there's quite a bit of quartz in it. However, here's the nuggets I detected from a different trip to Alaska. And you can see these are all on the small side. The biggest piece, I think, is around 0.5 gram, and most of them are much smaller than that. And I got a lot of pieces metal detecting. I certainly found a number of them, but none of them are especially large. And the total weight on this was something a little more than 5 grams. I once had the privilege of watching a small placer operator in Alaska do a cleanup, and this was the results of his cleanup. And you can see none of the pieces are particularly large, but there's a lot of gold here. The total weight on this was a little over 31 ounces, so that's a lot of gold, but it's all small flakes and shot and bits. and not anything real large. A friend of mine and I worked a high banker for a day, and this was the take, of course, in Alaska, and it weighs a little over a half an ounce. So hey, between the two of us, we did pretty good. We got a full quarter ounce apiece, but you can see there's nothing large here. There's only just a whole lot of little flakes, but it adds up. Here's another photo of some gold that some friends of mine got in Alaska. They were actually just pretty much exclusively running a high banker, but they were running a lot of material. And after, I think they were there a couple of weeks, you can see they got quite a bit of gold. I think this is well over 2 ounces. They took the bigger pieces and kind of slid them off to the right there. But again, it's the shot gold. It's not fine dust. It's little bits and pieces, but it's not big nuggets. And I just want to get the idea through to you on that. But I don't want you to get the idea that Alaska produces nothing but little gold. This is a set of nuggets taken by a guy in a week with a metal detector. The biggest nuggets here are over 2 ounces, and the total is over a pound, as I remember. So there is big gold, but if you're doing research, be sure that you find out about the size of the nuggets that were being found in the district you're looking at, because there's a whole lot of districts where the bulk of the gold is just little shot gold like I've been showing you in these pictures.
There's a good general geologic relationship for most of the Alaska placer deposits. The chief lode deposits, and like I say, most of the placers, are associated with intrusive granitic rocks. These rocks have intruded into older rocks that are Precambrian, Paleozoic, and Mesozoic in age. This belt of intrusive rocks that the gold is associated with extends from the Seward Peninsula all the way across the state to the Canadian boundary. The gold deposits form as veins and shear zones and brecciated zones in the intrusive rocks, but also in the adjoining sedimentary rocks. These types of deposits are similar to the placer-forming lode deposits in several Rocky Mountain states, especially including like Colorado and Montana. Although there's a good amount of gold associated with these intrusive rocks, there are far fewer lode deposits in Alaska, or lode deposits that get worked in Alaska, because of the heavy soil cover and organic growth and moss cover. You just don't see the outcrops, and so smaller veins and other deposits like that would get worked if they were in Montana or some other state in the lower 48 are just covered over and blanketed over with, like I say, moss and soil and trees and other brush growth, so it just doesn't get seen. However, the deposits, even though they're covered and hidden, get eroded over time and eventually work into the streams. And of course, in the streams, miners can find this stuff very easily. You don't have to find the location of a vein or other lode deposit up on a mountain that's so well covered over. It all works its way down to a stream, and that's how come the majority of the gold mined in Alaska has been from placer deposits. In spite of this, there have been some lode deposits mined, and of course there's the famous mine that I referred to, the Fort Knox mine near Fairbanks, and the Fort Knox mine is a large open pit that's been going on for decades. And in all the years, it's produced, like I say, more than 9 million ounces of gold, which makes it a tremendously large open pit mine. But even though those source veins are hidden, the majority of them are hidden, they do form these placers. They do eventually erode down into the streams, and that's what makes Alaska such an attractive place for placer mining. The placer deposits are very widespread, occurring along various places on all the major river drainages and many of their larger tributary streams, and even eventually reaching the ocean, where you have like the famous beach deposits at Nome, but also beach deposits at Kodiak Island, Yakataga, Lituya Bay, and Cook Inlet. Alaska has a lot of smaller commercial placer operations. In fact, over the years, there have been hundreds of places in Alaska where Small-time operators have worked with bulldozers and front-end loaders and other heavy equipment with trommels and sluice boxes and other types of things. The majority of these operations are closely held, often family-type operations, and they've been worked for many years during the summer and other warmer months where the people can get up there and the living is nice. Getting permits for these types of operations is much more doable in a place like Alaska than, say, compared to like California or a lot of the other lower 48 western states. Mostly in the lower 48, the issues have to do with water, and there's just so many fewer consumers of the water in Alaska, and there's so much water that it isn't the same kind of issue as it is in the lower 48. Let's take a look at some of these smaller scale operations that produce some real nice placer gold and talk about them.
So here's a typical real small operation, a moderate-sized excavator, digging material and feeding it into a hopper that goes into a trommel, and then a sluice box, a fairly short, simple sluice box for gold recovery. The coarse material, of course, goes out the trommel, and you can note that even on the left there, up against the hill, he's got a dredge set up too. So, these are small operations, but, over a summer, they can produce some very significant amounts of gold. Here's another typical Alaskan type operation that I had the privilege to visit. This is a little bit bigger. They've got a big wash box, a big high pressure wash box that has screens in it. You can't see the screen, but the oversize goes out on the left side of the wash box, and then the underside goes down into the sluice. The sluice is a little bit longer, and so they'll probably get a little bit better recovery on fine gold. And they've got a couple of pieces of heavy equipment for pushing material around and mining with. But again, this type of operation over a whole summer can produce a very significant amount of gold. Here's another small-scale Alaska operation. This one, again, a little bit bigger than the previous two that I've shown you. This one has a bigger excavator, and they also had a bulldozer and a truck that they used in their operation. But although the bulldozer and the truck are not in this picture, but they were feeding the wash screen with the excavator. The guy could meter the material in so he didn't overload the sluice boxes. And they made some good recovery with this material. And, they had good gold. Again, the bulk of it, though, was pretty fine stuff, not much in the way of nuggets. Here's another shot of that same operation, and actually in this one you can see the bulldozer working, basically reclaiming some of the mined area next to where they were running their wash plant. And you can see the wash plant, and then to the side is the sluice box that dumps out into the creek and recovers the gold. And this one had a good long sluice box for full recovery of the fine gold. This is an older type of mining unit that decades ago was pretty common, but is no longer so. This is a dragline unit, and basically there's a huge bucket that you can't really see very well in this photo, but the operator would swing that bucket out away from the crane and then pull it back via a pulley, and the bucket was such that it would scoop up material, and then they would take the material and dump it into their system for washing the gravel and sluicing it. This stuff worked really well and was very cheap and worked great where you had soft bedrock, and so the drag line could just easily scoop up the whole bedrock gravel layer and then maybe 6 to 12 inches of the soft bedrock on the surface, and that way you'd end up with getting all the bedrock material, all the gold that was on there. And so not very common these days, and this is an old one at a site where some mining has been going on, but the old equipment is left there and hasn't been in use in many decades.
Alaska has a huge number of placer districts and sub-districts that have produced placer gold. In fact, it's estimated that miners have produced placer gold from nearly 1,000 locations in the state of Alaska. That's a huge number. And like I say, a lot of these locations are very remote. A placer district in Alaska can cover literally 100 or more square miles and incorporate a number of smaller drainages, all pulling into a larger stream or river. And because they're so spread out, the amount of information is limited in a lot of these places. Often some of the districts or remote locations, places where there could have been operations, are known because, there was, it's been told to geologists, oh, well, so-and-so was working on such and such stream way back in the day. And the problem is that you go to try and find a stream with the name in that area of such and such stream, and there's nothing on the modern maps that are called such and such, whatever the actual name is. And so it's hard to correlate, well, so-and-so was working someplace here, and it, just where he was working or where that group were working, it's hard to figure it out. And then and on top of that, miners are generally kind of sensitive about giving out information about where they've been mining, that people will be attracted and come claim jump and that kind of thing. And so a lot of times the descriptions are vague, and the information just doesn't get out. And so you have a situation where over time, when people grow old and pass away or whatever, information is lost, and some of these areas become not known or become forgotten or lost. The vast Yukon drainage basin has produced more gold than any other region in Alaska, even though it was among the most recent of the gold-bearing regions to be realized to be productive. In 1898, the discovery of the rich Nome placers triggered a stampede to the new area and led to the rapid development of the whole Seward Peninsula. Nome has been the second largest region producing placer gold in Alaska. Let's dig in and take a look now at some of the many placer gold districts of Alaska, where they are, what about them, the basic facts of placer deposits in Alaska.
First, let's look at Alaska as a whole. Now, you look at this and there's various dots that show, there's a placer district. And so you see dots and a few dots scattered here and there. And you think, oh, well, there's a few little areas that have gold in Alaska. But this is really, really misleading to put a dot where a huge area is. Let me show you something that really more reflects the reality. What you need to think of is each dot represents a region. And so, when I draw a big circle around all the dots, now you're starting to get an idea for the fact that a lot of Alaska has gold. And so, this starts to give you a better picture of what the districts of Alaska, the placer districts, really look like. This area on the Kenai Peninsula is located south and a little southwest of Anchorage. And the more productive of the two is the Hope District. I've got here in yellow. A number of creeks were mined in the Hope area. Quite a few, actually. The most productive was Mills Creek and Canyon Creek. The area was mined by hydraulic mining along a lot of these creeks, both on benches along the creek as well as in the creek beds themselves. There was also some minor bucket line dredging early on, but the bucket line dredging didn't prove as successful as the hydraulic mining. Now, the Homer district that I have here in blue, there was some mining in a couple of areas. The most important mining in the Homer area was at Anchor Point, which is beach placers, and the beach placers were fairly productive there at Anchor Point. Next, we have the Cook Inlet Susitna River region, and we'll start with Anchorage. The Anchorage area, the big producer was Crow Creek near Gerwood. The gold is mostly reconcentrated from various glacial areas. The glacials haven't been reworked in modern times, and the gold concentrated out of them. A lot of the mining in this area was done by hydraulic mining, but there was hand mining as well. Next, we'll take a look at the Valdez Creek and tributaries. The Valdez Creek district is marked in blue on my map here. And the older channels there were cut by Present Creek, and it basically is Valdez Creek, and a number of tributaries were the source of gold there, and there was both hydraulic and drift mining done. Next, I have Willow Creek. There was some significant lode mining here. It's marked in orange on this map. And the big producer here was a place called Grubstake Gulch and some of the areas around it. And then Alfred and Mazuma Creeks were also minor sources, but the big source was Grubstake Gulch. And finally, the Yentna district. Cache Creek was the big producer here, together with a number of tributaries along Cache Creek, and then streams along here in this area draining both Peters and Dutch Hills. And also Peters Creek was a big producer. There was both significant hydraulic mining and some bucket line dredging that was done here to produce a significant amount of gold. Next, we'll take a look at gold from the Iditarod and Innoko area. Now, Iditarod, most is related to a monzonite stock that's in and around Chicken Mountain, and the area around Flat and Discovery is where most of the work has taken place. In fact, pretty much other than Moore Creek and a few other places, all the work has taken place in and around the Flat Township area. Other creeks, though, were mined. Otter Creek was where the discovery was made. Flat Creek was heavily dragline dredged, and there's lots of bucket line dredging that was done in the area. Some coarse gold has been found at Moore Creek, and in recent times, metal detectorists were active there. The whole district has produced more than 1 million ounces of gold, and there's still some current exploration for hard rock deposits in the area of Chicken Mountain. Now, in the Innoko district, most of the gold has come from on or near Gaines Creek, and of course some coarse gold has been found on Gaines Creek, even in the old dredge tailings. Like Iditarod, the Innoko area was heavily dredged with bucket line dredges that worked on Gaines Creek and Little Creek and Yankee Creek. Some other creeks were also mined. There's been hydraulic mining, and then also in more recent decades, mining with bulldozers and trucks and front end loaders and such. The total production from the Innoko area is about 500,000 ounces. So the two of them are big producers. And next we have the very famous Nome area, the Seward Peninsula. The Nome district shown here in yellow. Gold was discovered here, was the first discovery in the area in 1898 on the Snake River and Anvil Creek. Gold has been produced from residual deposits, but mostly along present-day streams, both in low and high benches along them. Gold has come from, of course, the famous beach deposits at Nome, and there is even offshore mining, of course, that takes place, offshore dredging. There's numerous streams around Nome that have been mined, and it's a hugely productive area. In this area, it is the biggest producer, although the total for the Seward Peninsula for all these districts is over 6 million ounces, but the big producer in these has been the Nome area. And some very coarse nuggets have been mined at Nome, but the bulk of the gold is fairly fine. But like I say, there are some very large coarse nuggets also. Next, we'll take a look at the area around Juneau, the capital of Alaska. Now, in Juneau, you can't get there directly by driving. You have to drive and then take a ferry to get to Juneau. There is no car road that drives directly into Juneau. Anyway, there are two places near Juneau that have produced some significant placer gold. One is the Porcupine Creek area near Haines. It's the area where Parker Schnabel and his family before him have been mining for gold in that area. And there's also significant placers were found on Gold Creek near Juneau. And the prospecting along these areas led to the discovery of some famous hard rock lode mines, including the Treadwell, which operated in the 1800s, and the currently operating Kensington mine. The Kensington has produced over its operation more than 1 million ounces of gold. So Juneau actually ends up being a more hard rock oriented region than placer, even though there certainly are some placers there. Secondly, in that area, there's the Yakutat beach sands. You can see there's a whole bunch of little marks along the beach there. There's a widespread area of beach sand gold. It hasn't been too productive, but it's very remote and not a lot of people are there. But there certainly is potential for beach sand gold there. Next, we'll have the Fairbanks district, which I've marked here in yellow. Gold was discovered by Felix Pedro there in 1902, but development was initially very slow. Most of the gravels that were rich were deeply buried by muck and other worthless gravel. But once the miners were able to develop the infrastructure and pumps and things needed to mine these deep gravels, the area boomed, and by 1961 had produced more than 7.5 million ounces of gold. The principal creeks in the area are Cleary with its tributaries, Esther, Fairbanks and its tributaries, Dome, Goldstream and its tributaries, and these were mined mostly by drifting because the gravels were deep. Now, large dredges were brought into the area, and some of the more larger rivers and streams were mined by dredging, and a lot of the dredged areas were more lower grade, but it was extensive and rich enough to keep the dredges working. So the dredges worked from 1928, and the last one shut down in 1963. The area has a whole number of smaller streams and creeks that were mined by smaller scale operators, like the ones I showed you with bulldozers and front end loaders and excavators and such, were mined for many years, more in the outlying areas around Fairbanks. But like I say, this has been the most productive area for placers. It's also been perhaps the most productive area for hard rock as well, with the currently operating Fort Knox mine having produced more than 9 million ounces in recent years. Next, we have the Tolvana district, and here on this map, Tolovana, and I marked it in blue. And the big producer here was called Nome Creek, and its tributary was Ophir Creek. Those were the two big producers. Dredges operated on Nome Creek for many years, and the total production here is about 380,000 ounces, which makes it a pretty big producer, a pretty major producer. Living Good Creek and Amy Creek were also productive. Olive Creek and some of the northwest flowing tributaries of Living Good Creek also produced good gold. So there was quite a bit of gold mined in the Tolovana district as well. This is the 40-mile area and surrounding districts. It's a very popular area. Many streams in the 40-mile district, which I've marked here in yellow. Both streams and benches have been mined, with many productive streams and creeks. Probably one of the best known ones is the area around Chicken, with Chicken Creek and some of its tributaries, Myers Fork. It's very popular because you can drive to Chicken, and many people do. And in Chicken, there's a huge facility for camping and long-term RVing, and they've got everything there for the person who wants to come visit, including an operation that you can mine gold there for a week or two or a month or for the whole summer if you like. So it's a very productive area. Nearby is Jack Wade Creek, which has produced some very coarse gold. The largest nugget I've found in Alaska, which is a 3/4 ounce nugget, and it's actually the second largest nugget I've ever found, was from the Jack Wade area. And there's some area of Jack Wade that's open to the public, and there's also some valid claims. So it's an area that if you're interested in Jack Wade, you need to do some research to figure out what's what. But paying your fee and digging along Chicken and the diggings they have there is very easy to do and usually quite productive. In green, I've marked the Eagle District. It's been mined from a number of creeks, including the 70-mile River, American Creek, and 4th of July Creek. It's been a small but consistent producer from a number of small-scale operations. The Shisana District, I've marked in blue here. The Productive placers are centered around the Bonanza Creek area. It's a small producer, but years ago I had the opportunity to visit this remote district, flew in a plane and metal detected and ran a high banker for a couple weeks while I was there. It was really great, and I'm thankful to the claim owners for letting me come visit. The Circle District, I've marked here in a kind of an orange color. There's various creeks again in this whole Circle District that have been very productive. The first creeks were discovered in the mid-1890s, and mining in the Circle area was continuous through the 1960s with more than 750,000 ounces produced. So that's been a very productive district. Gold has been worked in, like I say, a large number of creeks using dredges in the larger creeks, and then smaller scale operations, bulldozers and trommels and stuff in the smaller tributaries. The Talk area that I've marked in pink, Talk is a small producer centered around the townsite of Talk. It's really more of a supply center. Now, in this survey, I've covered a large number of districts and places where gold has been mined, but there's far more than what I've gone over that have been mined in Alaska. It's a survey. It's not a complete resource. If you or further research, I will have a link to places where you can search to get more information. If you want to do further research on placer deposits of Alaska, this is the book you want, Placer Deposits of Alaska by Edward Cobb. It's downloadable from the USGS website. It's free. It's Geological Survey Bulletin 1374, and you can just Google it and find it that way.
So while there are hundreds of places, and like I say, almost 1,000 places that miners have mined for gold in Alaska, a lot of them are claimed, okay? And maybe if you know somebody who has claims, or one of those commercial placer operations, somebody who has that, and you can work something out with them, hey, great. Maybe if you want to just do a crazy expedition of your own. But for people who don't want to go into the whole hog, there are opportunities for prospecting in Alaska. There's both public and private areas that you can access. I'll mention a few of the public areas. Pedro Creek is open for recreational prospecting, gold panning and stuff. There's a club, the Pioneers of Alaska, that has a claim open there on Pedro Creek outside of Fairbanks. And people are welcome to go out there and look for gold. The state of Alaska also has a few set-aside areas where they can't be claimed. There's a place called the Hatcher Pass public use area, and it's located approximately 15 miles north of Palmer on the Little Susitna River. Another is the Caribou Creek recreational mining area, and it's located at approximately mile 104 on the Glen Highway. Another is the Petersville recreational mining area, and it's near Petersville Road, located southwest of Denali State Park. All of these are open, and there may be some other ones that are open, but I just thought I'd mention these. They're there for people to take advantage of getting a chance to prospect on their own in Alaska. There's different rules for them, so before you go out to some of these areas, you want to know what the rules are, and you can find all the information you might need online. However, in recent years, there's been a unique and new form of tourism in Alaska, and I've actually taken advantage of this, where some of the commercial operators or other operators that have claims will open up an area and provide an experience for people to go, and whether it's high banking or sluicing, metal detecting or dredging, there's all these opportunities, and some of them provide very nice facilities to stay in. You're not staying in some old rickety cabin or pitching a tent someplace. These places have nicer facilities, and they make food and serve the prospectors, and it's not cheap, it's not free, but you get to keep all the gold that you find, and all these places have some good potential for gold to be found. Like I said, I went to one a few years back, and I found 175 nuggets with my metal detector in a 2-week period. Now you might say, well, 175 nuggets, but they were all real small. I think the largest of them was maybe around half a gram. So, a lot of them were even smaller than that. But still, finding all those nuggets, and then I also spent a bunch of time high banking, and it was a great experience. And for the guys that are interested in that and maybe want to get a first experience of Alaska, I think that those are great opportunities, and you really should look into them. Now, I'm not listing and giving a list of these because they were open for a few years and maybe they'll close, or, things change, what's available, what's not available. And so what I would tell you to do is to go online, use Google, look for Alaska prospecting opportunities, and you'll be able to find some of these things. And they're open for prospectors and tourists and people who want to find out what remote Alaska is really like, to get out into the wilderness and really experience finding gold. A lot of them provide equipment, or maybe you'll want to bring your own metal detector or something like that, but some of them provide metal detectors. Some of them have ATVs that you can rent to drive around on the property and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different possibilities and opportunities, and it's good for both experienced folks as well as kind of new prospectors to come out and check out the opportunity for finding your own gold in Alaska. When it comes to prospecting, there are a lot of advantages to the remote type places. They haven't been accessed by, hundreds of other people. And as I kind of showed earlier, a lot of Alaska is kind of remote. I mean, there's whole lots of areas that you just can't drive to. You either have to take a barge or if you have a car, you could take a barge, or, you fly in, and that's really what most people end up doing. When I've gone to Alaska, I've always ended up going in and flying into some remote area. And of course, areas that are, super easy to access have been accessed by people and worked and tried. And, maybe your skills will be able to find something that other people haven't found in the areas that are more easily accessed. But the remote areas have that potential that, was worked in the early days, and really nobody has been here with a metal detector since the early days when, they didn't have metal detectors. So there's really some interesting possibilities on some of these claims. Like I say, some of the claims are family held for long times, and people haven't been allowed in, and some of these tourism things are allowing people to come in to explore some of these new areas. The old timers, when they worked remotely, they got the cream of the crop, and because they had to come in on horseback or some other way, it was a thing where they got the best gold, the easiest gold, and they didn't leave. They didn't try and pick up every crumb. And so there is really good potential in some of these areas. But you have to be willing to go in by plane. And, some people find that a difficult thing. I've gone in by little planes and bigger planes and other things. Often it's really only a short plane ride of an hour or two, but still the distance that you covered, there's no road that goes between here and there. And of course, in Alaska, unlike the lower 48, where many areas are open pretty much year-round, or at least very close to year-round, up in Alaska, there's at least half the year. A lot of times, a lot of places, at least half the year that the area is unworkable. So let me talk to you a little bit more about reaching some of these remote areas, flying in, about my experiences getting into remote Alaska by plane.
Sometimes when you have a big, wide, good, flat gravel runway, they're able to bring in decent-sized planes. This isn't sized like a big jet or anything, but it's able to hold a good number of passengers and their luggage. And so, it's a pretty smooth, big flight that you don't have a problem with. But it isn't always that way. Sometimes when you have a big, wide, good, flat gravel runway, they're able to bring in decent-sized planes. This isn't sized like a big jet or anything, but it's able to hold a good number of passengers and their luggage. And so, it's a pretty smooth, big flight that you don't have a problem with. But it isn't always that way. The views from these little planes are really spectacular and something you're not going to see from any other position. And, you may spot a moose or some bear down below, but you're safely up in the air flying away from them, so no problem. Or you might fly in a really small little plane. You can't hardly see it, but you see where the tail of the plane is, just over and beyond the tail of the plane. That's the runway. It's a green strip that is comparatively flat, and that's what the plane takes off and lands on. There's no instrumentation or any of the things that you would see in a normal commercial air flight. And, these flights are all very weather dependent. This particular trip, we were delayed by a few hours by some rain. But the trip that I showed you, the first one with the big yellow airplane, we were delayed by a whole day because fog came in and you couldn't see the runway. And, if the visibility is low, these pilots aren't going to risk flying in and trying to land. And the problem is it can clear out for a few minutes and then come back. The pilot isn't going to fly until they feel safe. And of course, you don't want to fly unless the pilot feels really safe either. So, it's very weather dependent getting in and out of these places in these little planes.
Another thing that people ask about is this last one, the dangers of remote Alaska. People think about bear especially. And bear are potentially pretty darn dangerous. But believe it or not, under the right circumstance, moose can be really dangerous. And there's other dangers. In all honesty, I've made several prospecting trips to Alaska, and I think I've seen one or two bear. I've seen as many or more bear in Sierra Nevada and California. But I'm in California more frequently than I am in Alaska. But still, bear and moose and other animals maybe aside, wolves or something like that, all of that aside, honestly, I think the biggest danger of going into remote parts of Alaska is you have a problem. Maybe you're riding an ATV and whoops, you go over and break a leg or break an arm or otherwise seriously hurt yourself. There's no 911 that's going to bring an ambulance to your door. And you may be a couple hours flight away from any kind of help or hospital. And, the situation is, they bring you in a plane. They don't leave the plane there until you're ready to go or just in case you need to go. The plane leaves and then you're there. And you need to take care of yourself. And if you have medications that you need, prescriptions or whatever, you better bring them with you, or anything you might need for a prescription or something like that. Or, you need some ibuprofen or Tylenol or something, you got to bring that stuff with you. But, if you have a serious injury, fall and break a bone, that kind of stuff, they ain't anybody coming real quick. If you do these kinds of things, usually they have satellite phones and you'll want to call. If you have a serious injury, they'll call and have somebody come get you. But the plane's got to fly out and then they got to fly you back. And then you got to ride an ambulance from the airport to whatever hospital is there. So, there's dangers. In my honest opinion, the danger of injuring yourself and needing urgent medical help is greater than the odds are of being attacked by a bear. Although, there certainly is danger to it. The other thing that's kind of a dangers of remote Alaskan prospecting is the weather. I've only, I think I've had 4 or 5 prospecting trips to Alaska, and 2 of the times we were delayed by weather. The last time I went, we were supposed to leave on a certain day. I had, tickets, airplane tickets to fly, because we were going from a place that was outside, a flight drive from Fairbanks, and we had to get to Fairbanks, then Fairbanks to Anchorage back home. And I had tickets to go from Fairbanks to Anchorage and Anchorage back home. But the weather came in, the whole area was socked in with low-lying clouds and scattered rain showers and stuff. It wasn't so much that a scattered rain shower will stop the plane, but when they have low clouds and the clouds are only 50 or 100 feet off the deck, they're not going to fly in and then, not be able to see the hills around them or the valley that they got to land in. They're just not coming. And, that happens too. If you break an arm and you need immediate help, if you're socked in with clouds, they ain't coming until it's safe. And so, there are dangers associated with Alaska. Let me show you a couple pictures and talk about it more.
Here's the bear that everybody worries about, and yeah, these are dangerous, but for the most part, with some exceptions, these bears are more interested in staying away from you. They're not interested in tangling with you any more than you're interested in tangling with them. They want to keep their distance. They want you to keep your distance, and as long as you keep your distance, in most cases, and you don't tempt them with food, in most cases, you should be okay. This is one that a lot of people wouldn't think about. Moose are pretty docile, right? Well, there's exceptions. Here's a mother moose who has a calf with her. The guys that were with me from Alaska, that they were telling me, keep your distance, don't get anywhere near them. And this is a picture taken from several hundred yards away. You can see it's kind of a distance shot, telephoto. But you can see the mother moose, even though we're several hundred yards away, she's keeping an eye on us just to make sure we don't present a threat. Because if she thinks we're a threat, you're going to be in just as much danger as if you were wrestling with that bear. This is the one that I think is a real danger. Here was a guy driving down a well-graded dirt road, a highway that's traversed by trucks and cars and motorhomes. And he had a truck passing him on one side, and so he kind of got over to the other side of the road, got a little too far over, got onto the soft berm edge of the road, and the tires just dug in and it sucked him over, and next thing he knew, he was rolling over in his motorhome. Now, if you did this and you were severely hurt, you're in trouble because you're a long ways from help. And luckily, I'm told that by the people that were pulling the RV out of the forest there, that people were all wearing their seatbelts, and that all it was minor bumps and scrapes and cuts and that kind of thing, nothing of any serious nature. But you can see their motorhome's in bad shape. But they pulled it out of there. But anyway, if you injure yourself and you're out in a remote area, you got to be able to take care of yourself. You need that first aid stuff, and you got to be able to do what you need to do.
Finally, wherever you are, finding gold is a skill. And the skill that you have makes all the difference in the world as far as what you're going to find. It's not just a random thing where you walk out and if you're lucky enough, a big nugget's going to jump into your pocket. The more you know, the better your chances of succeeding. And, to give you those skills, to impart to you those skills, I wrote a book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now. This is my book, Fistful of Gold. It's an encyclopedia of everything you need to know to go out and find gold for yourself. It distills down my 45 years of experience out in the field prospecting, as well as my degree in mine engineering. It's, like I say, an encyclopedia. There's a lot to it. It's over 250,000 words long, hundreds of pages with hundreds of illustrations, teaching you what you need to know about geology, about mining districts, about techniques of finding gold. It covers metal detectors, sluicing, panning, dry washing, high bankers, you name it, it's covered in there. It talks some about platinum and diamonds, but it's mostly about gold because gold is more widespread. It is not so much a book about where to find gold, but a book about how to find gold. Because even if you have a location where gold was mined in the past and you go out there, well, where should you look to be successful in your prospecting, to find the gold that's there? This is the book that's going to tell you that information. I spent most of 10 years writing this book, so I thought a long time about it. It's got, like I say, lots of information and lots of illustrations, and I've had results from people who bought it. It's available on Amazon, but I recommend buying it through High Plains Prospectors, and I'll put a link in the description for buying this book through them. They have a better price than Amazon, and I have a special deal that I'll tell you a little bit more about, where you can get a 5% discount from the price even with that. On Amazon, the book rates a 4.7 out of 5, which means that of all the people that have bought it, they've been really highly satisfied, and I think you, if you buy my book, will be just as highly satisfied as well. Now let's talk a little bit more about High Plains Prospectors. They're a prospecting shop, a mail order prospecting shop that I've partnered with. The deal is that I can get you a 5% discount, a coupon code, and I'm going to put the code to that right here. It's just Chris Ralph, all caps with no space between Chris and Ralph. You put that in there as a discount code, and you'll get 5% off their already really good prices. I think it's a great deal where you win by getting a discount, I get a little percentage of that, and they get new business. So if you need prospecting supplies, High Plains is really the way to go. And I'll put information, like I say, in the description more about how you can work with them, because I'm working with them. They really are great guys, a great company. For even more information, I also have a website, and I'm going to show you my webpage and talk a little bit more about that right now.
This is my webpage. It's located at nevadaoutbackgems.com. You can Google it, or I have a link down in the description below. But there's lots of information here, miscellaneous stuff, pictures, some historic information as well, stories. It's got a lot of great fun stuff. You'll probably be interested in it.
Now, on all of my YouTube videos, I encourage you guys to ask questions. If you have thoughts, comments, suggestions for things that I ought to look at in my videos, things that you want to find out more about, and I answer 100% of my questions. There's not very many YouTubers out there that answer 100% of their questions. I'm one of the few. And so I will do my best to answer what you have. I mean, I only can write so much. Sometimes the answer is something where I'm going to recommend that you buy the book and read about it. I also ask that you subscribe to my channel, click the bell notification so that every time I come out with a new video, you'll be able to watch it. And like I say, I cover a huge amount of topics. I also have 250 videos that I've already done. And so you can go back through my catalog of videos on YouTube. I'm sure there'll be many videos there that you'll want to take a look at, especially if you have any interest in gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, geology, and that sort of stuff. My YouTube site is going to be right up your alley. So I'll see you again real soon. We'll be out in the field and back in the office at the whiteboard, and whether we're looking at gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, or other interesting geology, it's going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it, and we'll see you again real soon.